Oh, that glorious sound. Hello?
Okay, I
We
think
good?
that, yes, there we go.
All right, fantastic. So, do we have anyone who wants to ask a question, or should I start things off?
I think you should start
I
things
thought he was
off.
gonna say stuff first.
Oh, sure. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, just that I'm sorry I'm late. I feel so bad. I
It's
completely lost track of time, and I usually don't do that, so my apologies for that.
oh, totally fine. All right, so I guess I'll start things off. So, now that you've moved from your original game to the second one, how have you changed managing development, having a development team? Since a lot of us are in groups right now working on our own games, how have you managed that?
Well, I haven't really done too much as far as expanding the group of people that I work with. The original Cook Serve Delicious had one artist and one composer, and with the second one, I have about three artists and the same composer, and now I have two writers as well. Um, but for the most part, it's just me developing the game because I felt like that's the easiest thing for me to do. Um, it it's just very difficult for me to coding with more than one person. It can be quite involved. So I try to do the kind of games that I feel are pretty grand in scope, but something that I can manage. So in a way, I'm kind of building to the best of my abilities, and I've had to learn a lot with the sequel because there's a lot of new things that I've never really done before that are actually pretty common in the coding world. But yeah, I've just had to become a better coder. I always felt like I was more of a game designer than a programmer, but I've kind of had to learn.
We have a question
Hi,
for you.
yes. I'm actually really out of the loop here. Could you please introduce yourself? I have not heard of you.
Sure.
Sorry.
So,
Oh
for
yeah,
those who haven't heard of Cooks Are Delicious,
Yes, I haven't heard of your game either.
sure. It's a cooking game that came out on Steam about gosh 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah.
Um, and I'm the main designer and developer of that game, and the sequel, Cooks for Delicious 2, which is coming out later this year. And yeah, it's basically a cooking game that's more of a challenge. I bill it the first hardcore cooking simulation game, and
There you go.
it's really taken off on Steam and has sold over 200,000 copies. And it's on iPhone and iPad and all kinds of other platforms.
Yes, and your name is
It's David Galindo.
David Lendo. Okay, yes.
Galindo, yeah.
Lendo. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, what would you attribute Cooks of Delicious's success most to?
Um, it's really interesting because a lot of people that pick it up aren't accustomed. They kind of think it's a casual game because it involves cooking, and there hasn't really been any kind of challenging games that involve cooking out there. And I didn't really set out to create a casual game or a cooking game. I just wanted to create a fun, hard, difficult game. And what's interesting is that I think a lot of people kind of fall into that trap of thinking it's going to be a real cute, easy game, and a lot of them aren't prepared for the difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 20 minutes, they pretty much decide whether they're on board or not. And if they are, I feel like they become better game players than maybe they thought they were, because a lot of my customers are casual game players.
I see.
So that's been kind of interesting to see that take off.
So, working on the sequel, is there anything that you're doing differently to introduce new players? Because the tutorial in the first game is a little bit, I don't want to say lackluster, but a little bit
Yeah, it's
quick.
a little much.
Right, right.
I definitely want to get people in faster, and I don't want to hold their hand as much as I did in the first game. It was pretty much a big information dump in the first game, which is kind of neat, but at the same time tedious in its own way. And I want to make sure that people get to the action fast, that it's okay that they don't know everything. I think a lot of games like Zelda kind of taught a lot of developers, you don't have to tell the player everything. It's fun just to experience it for yourself and kind of learn on the go. So yeah, I have learned from the first one that I just need to get the player to the experience much quicker than I've done in the last one.
Okay, we have a question for you.
So I was wondering how long you spent developing the first game, if you don't mind.
Gosh, I was always working on it off and on, but really when I got down to it and came up with the design and what I wanted the finished product to be, maybe under a year. It wasn't very long. This one has taken about 2.5 years or so, which I didn't think was going to take that long, but I kept adding more and more and more to it until I realized I just had to stop. And that can be kind of dangerous with a sequel, that you just kind of do too much, that you feel like you just want to. You have to be mindful of the audience. You know, I think the audience would love a big, grander sequel in every way possible, but there came a point where I just had to realize if I want to make money with this, I have to stop putting so much into it. So it's kind of weird. You have to be a business person and a developer at the same time, and it's hard to balance that.
Thank you. My other question was, during the development of Cook Serve Delicious, did you find that there was a point at which the game was kind of still unfun? Like, how long did it take for the game to be actually fun for people that were playtesting?
That took a little bit, and I'm very thankful for beta testing because the first game was grindy in a lot of ways, which I'm going to fix with the sequel, but the original one before that, the beta tested version, was even grindier. I would add more and more days to complete each star level, which meant more hours to put in. So you would have to do 30, 40, 50 days of service. And it got longer, and I thought, oh, this is great. I can build this as like a 50-hour game. And play testers were just screaming at me. They're like, this is so tedious. You have to do something. And I ended up cutting down a technically 50-hour game to a 20-hour game. And all I did was condense everything. And it still kind of drags. So from that, I learned quite a bit. And it's kind of crazy. There's a lot of things that I don't see until I beta test it. And even when it's out there, I really credit Twitch streamers because I watch a lot of them, and they'll tell you, you can tell when you're losing the audience and they don't like something. And that's an even better version of beta testing because I can actually see somebody play it. And I fixed a lot of stuff post-release because of that. I tightened up some stuff, and yeah, it takes a while. And I have really yet to beta test Cook Serve Delicious too. And I know once I get it out there, I might have to change a lot. But I think in theory it's done, but we'll see.
So my last question for you is, what do you find has been the greatest design challenge, maybe aside from that, while you're developing? Is there a particular mechanic that's been hard to make feel fun or balanced?
Soup?
Balancing is hard, and I didn't do a great job of that in the first one. And you get enough of a balance to where everything works nice, and on the surface, I think people can enjoy it. But if you really dig deep into the first one, you'll know that like French fries are completely pointless, and there's certain foods that just don't make any sense. And it's kind of funny because in this sequel, I've gone to the extreme of that and have made foods totally useless in the sequel that are terrible and they don't make money. And the only reason I did that is because of the new campaign mode where you have to use that certain food in certain levels. And it was more of a fun gameplay design. And if you're playing the game in the manager mode, which is the original version of Cook Serve Delicious, you can put any food you want in the menu. There's certain foods that you never put on there. But in the campaign mode, I'm able to kind of just have fun and make foods that are fun gameplay-wise, but maybe not balanced or the open-ended version. So that's been a lot of fun. So I guess I haven't really, I still need to balance quite a bit in the sequel. I haven't gotten there yet, but it's been kind of fun having this separate mode because I don't have to balance certain foods. They don't all have to be equal to each other. And that's as a designer.
Thank you.
So my next question would be that moving from Cooks of Delicious 1 to 2, you've gone from 30 food items to over 100. I would assume inheritance would have something to do with that. How would you explain how you're able to create so many more foods in the second game?
Inheritance, what do you mean exactly?
Did you use the
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you use parents and children in Game Maker? Because I'm assuming you're still using 1.4.
Oh, no, I'm using Game Maker 2.
Oh, I see.
And I threw away all the code in the first game. And I started over.
Okay.
Because I hated it by then. I'm like, I can't do a sequel with this. So I started completely from scratch. And there's actually not a single component in this game that's from the original. All the art, all the music, all the sound effects even, except for probably the voices, are all new. That's kind of why it's actually taken me a little bit longer. But the reason I've gotten to I think it's over 180 foods is because I have a lot of money now.
Okay.
Spend so much on art, and that in hindsight, 60 foods would have been great. 90 foods would have been great, but I kind of just couldn't stop. And even now, I think, gosh, why didn't I add this thing or this thing? But I had to stop. I mean, it's it's just kind of crazy. But actually, a lot of those foods are more simplified foods. They're part of the new side dishes. And those only have one recipe and 2 ingredients. And they make sense in the game, and you'll understand why they're so simple. So I think maybe 60 or 70 of those foods are side dishes. But yeah, there's still a lot of complex dishes, more than double, probably, I guess 3 times as many regular dishes that you're used to in the first game are in the second game.
Okay, so we have a question for you.
Okay, I actually have a couple of questions,
Sure,
if that's
go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead.
So the first question is, how did you go about trying to make all of the dishes mechanically distinct, and how did you go about making them feel different?
It's interesting because I have a lot of foods that, so I separated a lot of them by the type of prep station. So you have deep fryer foods and stove top foods and cutting board foods. And so, like a lot of the deep fried foods, in the first game, there was virtually no difference between the 3 deep fried foods. There were sopapillas, fried chicken, and French fries. And they were pretty much practically the same. In this one, I wanted it to be more varied. First off, deep fried foods are not nearly as annoying as they were in the first game, in the sequel. But it's just little things like having a deep fried food and that being the first part of that food, and then still having to go back and have a second prep phase. And just making sure that each food is kind of unique in its own way, maybe different stages or different types of, it's kind of strange because, you'd be surprised, like 180 foods, a lot of them are made the same way. You're going to boil something, or you're going to just cut something up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and there are maybe only 1 or 2 types of foods in the game. Like there's one food that took me a couple of days to program, and it has a very unique mechanic that is not in any of the other foods. And it just kind of ended up that way because that's how you make it. So it wasn't actually a result of me wanting to cut down on the uniqueness, and that's how I got 180. It's because there's a lot of foods that kind of share similar mechanics. So it was kind of up to me to make sure that there was enough variety in prepping it and having different things happen, maybe afterwards, like I said, like a cannoli, you have to deep fry the shell, but then you still have to fill it and put the sprinkles on top and all that afterwards. So I had to make sure that it wasn't just like a different skin for each food.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was that in itself was a challenge because I couldn't make something up, you know. There's only so many ways you can prep foods, and I know I got some of them wrong, but we'll see how the chefs think.
Yeah. The cooking grogs.
Yeah.
So, did you get a lot of criticism with the first game for the realism of the cooking, or?
No,
Was that
not
the-
so much. Like there was like in soup, I put lettuce instead of cabbage, and somebody
Yeah.
put that out. I didn't even realize that. I just quietly patched it in, and then the screen said, "Oh, hey, they fixed it." And then he slowly realized that I was watching him.
Oh, God.
So that was pretty funny.
Creepy.
Because every
Just
thing
like-
about,
Yeah.
I would just patch it because I thought, "Oh, he's right," and he'd be like, "Oh, they fixed it again, huh? That's strange." So, but no, the first game more or less, people, I think because the foods look so realistic in this next game, that I think people will have a lot more to maybe tell me if I have something wrong, because I'm not an experienced cook. I actually had to buy some books on cooking, and I'm mostly going by a lot of internet research and Chef Ramsay and all that stuff.
Nice.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So the other question I had, this was originally two questions, was about how you go about playtesting. You were talking about like only doing beta testing much later in like the game process. So like what do you do in terms of testing before then? Is it mostly just you playing the game and seeing if you like it or not? Or like at one point.
Yeah, usually it's that, and because this is a sequel, I more or less know how it plays. So in this one, I guess I'd be a lot more worried that I haven't gotten it out there and really tested it. But I've more or less got it. I more or less know what works and what doesn't. The fundamentals are still there. There's just a lot of new things that I'm unsure about, and even that has changed rapidly. And that's only because I'm theorizing how the game is going to be played. At some point, side dishes were just a fun bonus multiplier. And as I was working, I thought, well, no one would ever use that because in the moment, people just want those perfect combos. No one's going to care about a tips multiplier by making a side dish. So I thought no one's ever going to use it, and fundamentally, it's not worth it because you want that perfect day. So then I thought, well, how can I get the player to want to make a side dish? And now I've come up with the idea of if you make a side dish, customers will stay longer. And so the gameplay, it's weird because I'm theorizing already what people are going to tell me doesn't work. And I guess it's because of all my experience with the first game. And I'm able to kind of more or less beta test, I guess, my own game. But that can only go so far, and I'm going to have to get that game out there, people play it. But yeah, there have been games where I've canceled because I've played it before I even beta tested it and thought this isn't fun at all. I've completely missed the point, and I can't fix this. And that was very early on, before Cooks and Delicious 1.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there any particular reason you hold off so long on like getting outside people to play test it? Rather than
It's not finished. It's not so much that I have the game ready to go. It's because I want it to look really good.
yeah.
First impression. I think beta testers know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Beta test.
So, I was just wondering, like not even like beta testers, but like any alpha testers, friends and family, that kind of thing.
Oh, sure. I mean, there are some people. I get some friends to take a look at it, and
Okay.
they ask and see how they might change certain things. My friend is a huge fan of the first game, so
Awesome.
I'm able to kind of bounce some ideas off of him. But it's really because it's a sequel. I feel like I have to get everything ready with all the new components and everything before somebody can objectively try it and tell me if it doesn't work.
Okay.
Everything's kind of dismantled, and that's my fault. But I'm actually actively right now trying to get everything together to where somebody can play it. Because right now I can call up foods, I can make them, but there's not like right now there's no component to like serve customers to me and have like a pay like a regular day.
Yeah, it's just you've got parts of the game, but there's no game as a whole.
And that's really because I had to build it from scratch. And yeah, that's my fault really, but I'm not too worried about it.
Did you want to take that? If I could take it over?
Did anyone have another question?
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, what inspired you to develop Cook Serve Delicious in the first place?
Oh gosh, I played a game in the PlayStation Summer Underground Jam Pack back in the PlayStation 1 days. And I had an import section, and they had a game called Or No Ryori. And man, that game was so fun. It was a twin stick cooking game, and it was so much fun that I made 2 fan games based off of that that look really terrible now, but it was fun. And I thought, man, nobody's ever done a cooking game like this before. It's so neat. I hope somebody takes that idea and makes it. And I ended up making it as a fan game. And then I tried other games to kind of help my career, I guess. And Cook Serve Delicious was the last resort because I had already made 2 games, fan games. And I thought, well, let me try a commercial version of it and see if that takes off. And if it didn't, I thought, well, because I had already made games that didn't really make all that much money. And it was basically either going to be a hobby or a career at that point. So a lot of people have asked me for a sequel for the 2 fan games that I made. I made one that was commercially like that and was hoping it'd bite, and I didn't really realize I didn't know if it was going to take off or not, but I'm so glad it did because that was going to be it for me if I didn't make it work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, this isn't really a question, but the games you made were Orono Ryomi, right?
Yeah, or no Ryomi.
Yeah.
I
I
make sure
actually...
it's Ryomi so I didn't get sued because it's on PlayStation.
But yeah, my brother used to play those games all the time. One of my earliest childhood memories is watching him play that like for hours. He was obsessed with it. And I found Cook Serve Delicious, and I showed it to him, and I told him it was from the same developer who made the games he spent so much time on back in the day, and he was so happy.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea people actually played the fan games that I made. I didn't really know that at all until people told me kind of stories like that, like, oh, I used to play the old games. And I thought, wow, I didn't think anybody played the old games.
Oh, my brother was so into them, and I used to love watching him play it. It was so great.
That's awesome. Wow. The art was so bad in those. I had to draw everything.
Yeah, I know. It was pretty good.
So I guess leading into that, you switched artists from You switched artists from Sarah Gross to Camille Kuo, I believe,
Yes.
for the second game. How would you say? Do you know how they made the art style kind of work with what you were doing? How did you 2 work together to get everything together?
Well, Sarah did an amazing job on the first game, and she kind of had her own thing going on. She took a job with Humble, and she had other projects, so I had to find another artist. And I love the style of the first game, and I wanted to keep the customers and the art the same, but maybe upgrade it just a little bit. But I wanted the food to be ultra realistic, and so I had a call for an artist on an art form, and Camille. It was actually for another game that I ended up delaying and hadn't talked about that I'm going to work on after Cook Serve Delicious 2. But she worked on that project with me, and that project had about 15 artists or so. And I ended up halting that project because I thought I need to make Cook Serve Delicious 2 before too many years go by and people don't really remember the first. So I ended up finishing up contracts with all the other artists because all of the artists are contract work. And I basically just kept one, was Camille, because she was really good. She did all the vegetation and stuff for that game that I'm deliberately not saying the name of. And I asked her if she could do stuff like this, if she could draw realistic food, and she drew a hamburger, and it looked amazing. Wow, this is gonna work. This is totally gonna work. And it's kind of fun because she's from Korea, so I've had to kind of explain to her, no, you don't understand. Our chicken strips are huge in America, way bigger than this. And there have just been certain things that I mean, it's kind of crazy for her because she's never seen food like this before.
Okay.
And I'm glad that I got two of her dishes from Taiwan, which is pig's blood cake and fried topping shaved ice.
Okay. Oh
Those
yeah,
are-
the shaved ice looked great. on
Yeah,
the
that
page.
was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. There's so many dishes I've never tried before in the game that look really good.
Do we have any other questions for anyone, or should
Oh, I want to ask, do you enjoy playing Cook Serve Delicious yourself?
I? Oh, that's a good question.
I used to.
You used to.
You used to.
Oh no.
It's just I know how it works so much that I couldn't even say that I used to. I just play it and I know how it works, and I just kind of play it and think, okay, good, it's working. I'm hoping with this game, because I haven't even played it myself, that I don't know, this is so weird. It's
Right.
just weird. It's weird talking about it. Like there have been games of mine where I've gone back and I've forgotten all about them, and I play them like a normal player, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of neat. But a majority playing, I think, oh god, this is terrible. What? It's hard to go back to things because they're all kind of bad. I didn't really answer your question. I don't know. I like playing other games.
Oh, what kind of games do you like to play then?
What did you say?
So what other kinds of games that do you like to play, if not Cook Serve Delicious?
Oh, I like. Let me see. The Binding of Isaac. I play a lot. I don't know if y'all heard of that one.
Yes.
Yes.
That one's so much fun. I play it a lot. But I kind of jump around from game to game. I'm trying to finish Horizon so I can play Zelda. But I just have less time these days because I always feel guilty if I'm not making my game.
Oh, okay.
But I kind of have to force myself to have like 30 minutes of downtime.
Okay, so it just,
So aside from adding the campaign mode and much more food to the second game, what were some of the largest changes you wanted to make when you were developing the sequel?
Well, I want to have way more food for sure, and then I wanted to make it much bigger than the original. In fact, this one is smaller than my original goal, which was so stupidly big that I'm glad I didn't do it. Because there's a point where I think creators can fall in love with their game and they feel like, okay, this is my game. I think it's worth $25 because I put in this much money, and it's like 100 hours. And it's the biggest sequel ever, and it's going to be great. I was going down that road, and I had to hit the brakes because it was an eye-opening post on NeoGAF. Somebody talking about how a lot of indie sequels don't do as well as the first game. And I tried to figure out why that is. And I think it's because I think you take the base for granted, your own fan base. Maybe they've gotten their fill with Cook Serve Delicious, and maybe they see a sequel and they think, well, I played the first one and this looks like more of the same. Because fundamentally it's the same game, but there's so much new stuff that it's easy to dismiss as more of the same. And I had to stop, and I had to make a very nice big game that I can't charge, an insane amount of money. But I have to charge a little more than the 10. So it's been a weird balance because there are certain things that I would love to do for the game that doesn't make sense day one, but maybe would be a great downloadable content for free later on. Because I had a lot of free stuff for the first game.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah, and so I kind of have to. It's weird. You see people say, "Oh, those scumbags," they held back all this content for the game, and now they're selling it and all this stuff. But I'm understanding now why that is. I'd rather get a game out there that's big and then have the reception to downloadable content be, oh wow, I'm up for more, and it was already at a great price, and it's a low price for downloadable content. I'd go for it. So I want to release a ton of free content for the game down the line instead of trying to just make this huge big game for a big large price. But I don't want to come across as somebody that's holding back a lot of stuff. It's just weird. It's a hard balance. I don't want to lose the trust of people because that's a very easy thing to lose if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's the gaming industry right now is, I would say a lot of the audience is very negative toward paid DLC. But I guess it would depend on the publisher in that sense. But a little bit more on topic. So, were there any aspects from the original game that you knew you wanted to keep the same in the sequel?
Pretty much the way orders are brought in and you make them, and the perfect average bad stuff. And I wanted to keep the core idea of buying foods and stuff, but that's really it. I really wanted to, first off, wanted to give them all the grinding. And so to replace that, you level up in the game like pretty much any other standard game. And your stars now align with the new chef rating. And now it feels like you're accomplishing more per minute than you were in the last game, where it felt like it really would take an hour or two before you would get to the next milestone. And this one, I just need to feed the player tons of, I don't know, not so much pat themselves on the back, but make them feel like they're doing stuff. And so for this game, I just wanted it, I felt like the first game was a rough draft for what this game was going to be. And when people told me, oh gosh, I love this game, the first game, played all the time, I want to ask them, really? Yeah, really? That's so crazy. And I'm on my second playthrough, and I'm like, I could do so much better, though. You don't understand. I feel like that's just like a core, the very core of what this next game's going to be, but much bigger. At least I hope. That's the goal. We'll see if people like it. I don't know until they start playing it.
So when you were developing the original Cook Serve Delicious, did you know you were going to release on both the PC and mobile devices?
I had an idea. Yes, actually, I did. But as the game was being made and I released it, it took a few weeks for it. It was kind of a failure at first, and it didn't sell very much because I didn't release it on Steam. There was no easy entry to Steam. I think it was in 2013.
So
and
before Greenlight, right?
I was bummed out because I thought, well, this was my last chance, and now it's gone. And I've only made like $100, and it's been a few days. And then Giant Bomb did a quick look of it, and then it just took off from there. What was the original question?
Well, I guess the next question would be how did you design the game in a way that it would work on both PC and mobile?
Oh, right. So I didn't know it was going to be on. I had an idea it was going to be on mobile, but because it didn't take off originally, I thought, well, there's no point in doing a mobile version because that market's even worse with the iPad and stuff. But once it took off, then I felt better, and I continued my original idea. And actually, because of that, I had to design the game to be 30 frames per second, and because that was going to be a lot easier for me on the iPad to manage. Because iPads and iPhones, back then we've really jumped far as performance goes. So I wanted to, a lot of my plans and stuff that I did for PC were kind of held back because of mobile. I never really told anybody that, but that's really a lot of my plans. I thought, well, will that work for PC and mobile? And if it did, I just thought, well, I won't do it. For this game, I completely abandoned the idea of a mobile version even existing, even though I know for sure I want to port it to mobile at some point. But that's allowed me to create a much bigger, grander game. And at the same time, I think, how am I going to make this work on mobile? Oh, well, I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's a lot more freeing, but it's still going to be a big headache later on down the road. But
Right, right.
I don't mind. I'll make it work. And it's two totally different ways of developing the game. And I won't know until, I guess, the mobile version is announced and released which one works.
So, looking at some of the older designs for the UI, I mean, maybe around the time when you first announced Cooks of Delicious 2, the interface for preparing the food was very different. Again, for those of you who haven't played it, I would describe it as the playstyle is like typing of the Dead meets Diner Dash or something along those lines. And how did the evolution from sort of the wheel style of ingredients that you were going for to something that looked closer to the original Cooks of Delicious 1 proceed?
Well, I wanted to do like a more modern looking version of the first game. I wanted to look fancier. Like, I wanted it to be from going to a fast food type thing with CSD1 to like a fancy restaurant. And I completely failed at that. And I realized that the official screenshots on my website, the UI looks nothing like it does now. UI design is so difficult. I have revised that ingredient menu like 20 times. And even the stuff I have out now, the stuff that I have internally that I haven't shown anybody looks totally different again. But I think it's the final version because I finally thought, I don't want to do modern anything anymore. I just want to have fun and be a little silly. So I'm kind of going back to my roots with the first game. And I took the elements from that one, put it into this one, but modernized it a little bit. So I'm really curious to see what people think of it now that I've redesigned it for the 20th time. But I guess that's really, most developers aren't really that open with the development process. I mean, everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
And honestly, maybe I shouldn't have shown it so early because it's radically changed quite a bit. But you just have to keep redoing it until it looks right. And there are plenty of people that have told me, actually, I'm kind of glad I showed it early because I got a lot of
Feedback.
resumes, from UI designers saying, hey, game. And I'm like, what? Why? It's already finished. The UI looks great to me. And the more people told me that, I thought, well, it obviously looks bad. And I had to figure out why they thought it looked bad. Once I took the blinders off, I kind of realized, wow, this does look bad. But I had to redo it. And, I'm still not a UI designer, but I think I've gotten much closer to my goal of it looking fun and neat. At the very least, something unique that no one's ever really seen before.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, was there a moment at any point in either the prequel or sequel where you didn't feel motivated to work on it anymore?
I had, in the middle of all of the Cook Serve Delicious 2 development, I was building an office, and I was dealing with a contractor that I would later find to be very scummy and very, he was bad.
What was he like? Did he drive like a black van or something? Like,
Well, he would take my money and he wouldn't give me
mhm.
things that I was paying for, or he would give me things that was of lower quality than I originally discussed, and just a real scumbag, pretty much.
Okay, sure.
And problems, it would rain and the office would leak like crazy
Oh.
and flood, and
Oh my God.
because it was a totally new building that he built, and I would go weeks without developing the game because I had to be hands-on with building my new office. And that was so depressing because I was working in I think 60 square foot closet, like a tiny little closet, which was fine, that's how I made all my games, but I wanted to work in my nice new office, and it just took so much out of me because he was a thief pretty much. I had found out.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, I had learned a lot from that, and to have that, all I wanted to do was make games and instead I was like a contractor trying to hire out different people to finish my office, and that took, out of the 2.5 years that the game's been in development, I mean, that easily took 9 or 10 months of not working on the game. And I'm glad it's finished. The office is great. It doesn't leak anymore.
Yes,
So
that's a plus.
I'm for the first time able to just do what I love, which is just make games all the time. And it's been so freeing. And I've had to make sure to force myself to take a day off, even if I have an impending deadline and everything is doomed.
Oh,
You know, I force myself to have one day off. And if I don't, I all burned out.
yeah. Sorry, we have a library announcement happening.
Oh.
This isn't recorded either. It's someone saying it, and they do it every time.
Ooh.
Okay, yeah, moving on. So since probably around this time, I'm sure there are people who are starting on new projects. Is there anything that you would recommend someone who's starting on a game or maybe in the middle of the game to focus on while developing?
It's easy to work as long of hours as you possibly can. I absolutely, because with my one day off, I also get one night off as well, extra. And I just play with friends and stuff, and we do non-gaming video game stuff. I tell them I don't want to play video games. Let's play a board game. Like, a lot of tabletop games are a lot of fun. Actually, just to make sure to balance all of your work with at least something that you enjoy, and kind of force yourself to do that, because it is so easy to just let that slide by. And you'll be surprised. You will get into a slump to where you don't want to do anything anymore. Because I've done that. I've worked for like 3 straight months, and I've completely burned myself out and think, why am I still making games? I can't do this anymore. And if you don't take a little time off each week, you'll get there. You won't know it, and it won't feel like it, but at some point it's gonna catch up with you. For me, actually, it caught up with me with like 2 panic attacks in the same week. And I was not expecting that, because I'd never had a panic attack before, and I didn't know what it was. And in the middle of the night, I just woke up, and it was terrible. And I really just attribute that to just my insane work schedule. So as far as developing games and stuff, I know that's a weird
Oh
thing
no,
that
I'm sure a lot of us
but-
understand we're in college, so.
Yeah, like you have to just, even if things are dire, you have to make a deadline. At least make a few hours at one point during the week,
Okay.
because it'll catch up with you.
So we have a question for you.
Hi. What were some assumptions that you started off with when you first set out to make Cook Serve Delicious that ended up kind of being proved false as you got farther along in your development?
Well, I had assumed. So this sounds weird, but I had just assumed that people that were going to play my game were guys that loved action games, that liked action-packed games, and I was basically making it for me, which would be an audience for them. And what I was not prepared for was, I don't have any official statistics, but I would say a large majority of the fan base for Cook Serve Delicious women. And I did not expect that at all. And what I had found, like my friend has 4 sisters, and they all love Cook Serve Delicious. They are not gamers at all. You know, they don't play any kind of games except phone games, really, which are games. You know, I'm not saying that phone games aren't games, but you know, they're not like they're kind of the click tappy type games. They're not like skill based games. And they found Cook Serve Delicious, and you know, that first day kind of hits you, and they weren't expecting the difficulty like that, but they improved their skills, And now they're way better than I am at the game, which, I'm not actually all that good at my own game to begin with. But these girls, they were just amazing. They are able to do a perfect day and do it so quickly. I'm completely floored that they're not skilled esports gamers. They're just amazing. So in my head, I had just assumed the wrong audience for this game. And it's been really humbling because I get a lot of fan mail from, young girls or women that are I'm an expert at games and I love cooking games and there's no game on the market like yours. They all assume that we're just kind of, not great at anything. And, they kind of spoon feed you as far as cooking games go. Another good cooking game last year was Overcooked. That was a cool kind of skill-based game that you don't expect to be super challenging, but it's a lot of fun, and it is. So there's just been this kind of surge of, I don't know, I had assumed wrongly the audience for this game, and it's been really neat. And for this sequel, I didn't want to think, okay, well, what do young girls like in cooking games? I just wanted to make the same type of game that I made in the first game, and I hope that the same audience enjoys it like they enjoyed the first game. Because I can't make it for anybody but myself. And I didn't expect that. I had assumed totally wrongly, and it's been great getting that feedback.
All right, thank you.
So I believe in the PDF that you included for the Humble Bundle Game Maker Edition for Cook Serve Delicious, you had mentioned that you didn't want to work in anything other than Game Maker. So have you tried any other engines, and what are your takes on them, if you have tried them?
Well, if it wasn't for Game Maker Studio 2, I think I would have moved on to a new engine. But Game Maker Studio 2's blown me away. It's just amazing. And I still feel the same, that I probably wouldn't use another engine, but I haven't been able to try any other engines. I just really haven't had time. I think eventually I will move on to a different engine, but I just haven't had time to really try it out because, mainly I'm working on this game. And if I try to learn something else, I don't want to mix up the two engines,
Mm-hmm.
And because even moving from GameMaker 1.4 to 2 took a lot of, it handles a lot of things differently. So I've had to learn a lot from that. But like I said, I'm mostly a game designer first and a programmer second. So I don't really, there's a lot more you could do with other game engines, but everything I want to personally make, I can make in GameMaker. So I've yet to feel the need to move on to something else because GameMaker hasn't held me back. Only in efficiency, which GameMaker Studio 2 solved.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have any? I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but do you have any formal experience learning formal? Have you ever been formally taught how to code, or has it all been self-taught?
No, I don't have any idea how game studios work or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me just learning. I started with GameMaker 3, and that was really interesting. The creator of GameMaker would peruse the forums and play your game and just kind of tell you what's wrong with it. And it was fun times back then. But I'm mostly self-taught, but I didn't really learn programming until this game. Because even Cook Serve Delicious 1, if you look at the Humble Bundle code, it's just complete garbage. It's just terrible. And I told them I don't want to release my code unless I can have like a little PDF pretty much explaining, apologizing a million times. And they said, yeah, you can do that. So I thought, okay, that sounds good. But putting that code out there it's kind of embarrassing. But I've learned not to be embarrassed by it because I've learned a lot from that. And in this game, I feel like I'm a better coder, but I know I'm not nearly as good as somebody who has had formal training in programming. So yeah, I could learn a lot if I really either was formally trained or if I looked up books in it and stuff. And I could probably do that once I get this game out the door. But yeah, it's all self-taught stuff.
Okay. I guess if there are aren't any other questions, I could probably move on to the kind of last one I wanted to ask, which is there anything you wanted to sort of talk about this Cooks of Delicious 2 specifically at all, or are you a little bit tight-lipped about that right now?
Just that I hope people find it as enjoyable as I think they will. I think it's going to be surprising for a lot of people. They're going to see the jump from the first game to the second game and really be quite surprised, I think. But I didn't want to lose focus on what made the original so much fun. I know this is a weird thing to say, but I hope people trust me as far as my plan goes and what I'm thinking. And there are elements in this game that so have y'all played Clash Royale on the iPhone?
Probably a couple of us.
Yeah.
I'm seeing two.
Or
of us, yeah.
in Clash of Clans or any type of mobile or what's it called, Doom Beach, stuff like that. Those games are fun until you hit a wall, and you always come off of those games like, I'm never playing this game again. And it's weird because you have so much fun at the beginning, and then you just fall off that cliff. And by then, you've already, at least for me, I've already put in like $50 or whatever in the game, and I'm done with it. But the developers don't necessarily care because they've gotten their value out of it. They've gotten their money, and it comes, it's weird because I've learned from those games, gosh, those are some really neat mechanics, but they're tied into this free-to-play stuff. So Cooks Are Delicious 2 has elements of it that look like microtransactions, that look like free-to-play stuff, that kind of looks like stuff like that. But I built it intentionally not to ever have microtransactions or stuff like that. It's built in there because the mechanics of those things themselves are really interesting and kind of fun. You know, I have consumables in there in the form of these new things called secret ingredients. And if you see them, you think, oh, okay, so this is like, I can buy maybe like an ingredient box for $5, right? And I'll get these ingredients. Well, no, I'm never going to allow that to happen. That's not what this is for. It's a neat mechanic that I feel is cool, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. That somebody will take a look at this game and they'll sum it up and they'll think, oh, it's one of these, microtransaction consumable type of games, but it's not. I think it takes the best part of those, but does away with paying to win or paying for anything. The only thing you would pay for in Cooks Are Delicious would be an expansion that has foods and stuff. But you would never pay for, more money in the bank or golden tickets to buy special foods. It's not like that. So I know I'm being very vague and stuff, and I know that's not alarming, but I just basically took everything that I love about games today and put it in this game, and took out all the stuff that I didn't like. And it's not that microtransactions and stuff I don't like, but yeah, I wouldn't put it in my game because that's not really. I don't want a balance for that, I don't want anyone to have an advantage over somebody else because they spent $10 extra. So it's kind of a risk for me to add those kind of elements like consumables. But I thought it enhanced the game in a way that made it really interesting. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I can only say so much. Don't worry. Trust me. I'm not going to do it. People still won't believe me, but I'm going to take that risk. We'll see what happens.
Okay. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your honesty. I think we all really appreciate it. Hopefully we've created some interest in Cooks Are Delicious too. I'm not really sure. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm thank you for asking me and inviting me. I'm really honored to be a part of the Game of the Month thing. And yeah, thanks so much. Sorry again for being late.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful night.
All right, you too. Appreciate it.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks again. Please buy Cooks Are Delicious too. That's my plug.
Thank you.
All right.
Oops.
Oh,
Damn. I was gonna say whoops.
Shut up. He's like, peace out. I got things to do.
Now he hates us.
So I guess I'm really just gonna wrap it up with him and just say thank you for coming and all that. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for being quiet. I'm sure we all appreciated that.
And then when are we streaming this as part of the game of the month?
Yes, that will
When?
be on the next Sunday, right?
Yeah, the last Sunday of the month.
The last Sunday of the month, which is
Is
the
Game of the Month.
30th.
What's that?
30th? Which is the 30th. So we will be streaming Cooks of Delicious on the 30th. I have to end the stream as well. Thank you all for watching, listening on the stream. Yeah, that was happening. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to end the stream. Okay, bye.